Walt Disney was a man who loved to play jokes on his colleagues. Once, when they were working on a cartoon about a mouse, he thought of a prank. He brought a big live mouse into the studio where everybody was working. Soon after, the little creature slipped out of his hand, got loose, and ran around the room. It got under people's clothes, ran up their hair, and finally, after much effort, they caught the mouse. And suffice it to say, the little mischievous mouse inspired one of the most famous cartoon creatures we all know, Mickey Mouse. Hi there, you're listening to What's New Today. This is a kids and family podcast about current events shaping our world. This is Sangeeta, your host from India. As Disney Studios celebrates its 100th anniversary in 2023, we're publishing a 3-part podcast series. This is part 2 of this series. In part 1, we spoke about stories from the early years of Disney. If you haven't heard it, I highly recommend you listen to that after you finish listening to this episode. In this part, we speak about some of the interesting characters from recent Disney movies and how these famous stories have evolved. And joining me to talk about this in this episode is...
Hi, my name is Ananya Harish. I study in 6th grade in Bunt, Sangha, S.M.Shetty International School and Junior College. I'm 12 years old. I love reading, writing poems, stories, journaling, art, all of that. I love it.
On that note about how people love storytelling, let's launch into our episode about one of the greatest storytellers of the 20th century, Walt Disney. I think for a lot of people, he stands for many different things.
He is a great storyteller. He's a creative animator. He's an entrepreneur. He's a risk taker. He's so many different things.
To start out today's episode, I thought we'd start with a tiny little quiz about Disney characters.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I'll give you a few hints and see if you can guess who this character is. Shall we try? Here we go. The first question, identify this character. I've been looking out of a window for 18 years and dreaming about what I might feel like when those lights rise in the sky.
Tangled, Rapunzel.
Yes, she's been stuck in a tower for 18 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the floating lights at her.
Here's the second question. Hakuna Matata, no worries. This is a famous line said by whom?
Pumbaa and Timon.
Yeah, in which movie?
The Lion King.
Absolutely, everybody's favorite, right?
Yeah.
And the last question in this quiz. Who's this? In the Cave of Wonders, this person had been trapped for 10,000 years.
The genie from Aladdin.
Yup, he's a genie who has lived there for 10,000 years. You know, when he tells Aladdin that I've been trapped for 10,000 years and he, emerges out of that lamp, you know what Aladdin first says?
No, I don't remember.
Do you have a crick in the neck? You must have bent for such a long time.
Oh, yeah.
I found that line absolutely hilarious. On that note, we are trying to track the journey of how the Disney Studios has evolved in the last 50 years. So this year is the 100th year of Disney. So imagine this story where Elsa is the villain of the story and she has spiky blue hair and a team of angry snow monsters who will do her bidding, and Olaf is the leader, the big angry henchman. And Elsa then transforms into this evil snow queen. In the end, there's a fight between the good and evil, and Elsa is forced to give up her powers. How different is this from the real story of Frozen?
Extremely different. But it is reminiscent to something else, isn't it? There's actually a fairy tale. It's a very old one.
It's the
But
Hans
it's of
Christian
the-
Andersen's tale.
Huh.
That's what you meant, right?
It's about the Snow Queen, which follows this plot exactly, and it's what inspired Frozen in the first place.
There's a tiny story about why Disney Studios changed the entire plotline of even Frozen 1. So this original fairy tale is what they were actually going to create and make into Frozen 1 movie. And Elsa was going to be the villain and the evil Snow Queen. And there was going to be one song in the movie, song at which point she has to transform into the evil Snow Queen. And so when they gave this song to a songwriter, the lyricist and composer duo, they are called Kristen Anderson Lopez and Robert Lopez. They gave it to them and said, this is the story, and you please write this song for us. So what happened was, when Kristen Lopez and Robert Lopez were thinking about this whole storyline, they wanted to put themselves in Elsa's shoes. So they thought about a girl who has trapped all her powers and kept it suppressed inside her, right? They felt sympathy for her. They did not think that this little girl is likely to, turn evil. So they felt this little girl deserves a lot more sympathy for who she is, and there is potential for her to actually turn into a good person who will accept that these are my powers and let me put these powers to good use. So then when they thought of this, and they said, okay, I know what, Elsa is someone who doesn't have to be ashamed of her powers. Do you think she should have been ashamed?
No, not at all.
In the original story, she's, that's how they kind of build her character. And then they wrote the song Let It Go, where they say, okay, let go of all the embarrassment that you might have and accept your powers for what it is. And they sent that song to the Disney team. When the Disney team heard the song, they loved it so much. Of course, the song became a big hit among children like you and adults like me. So the song changed the way the Disney storytellers thought of the story.
I didn't know that was the cause for the change of thought.
Music plays such an important role in all the Disney movies, right?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. But for Walt Disney, music was a very, very quintessential part of every movie that he made, beginning with his very first feature film, which is Snow White. So
it actually won an Oscar. It won an Oscar, and Walt Disney actually got a customized one. He got 7 tiny golden men along with that actual honorary award to represent the 7 dwarfs in Snow White.
So he got a customized award.
Yeah, a customized Oscar.
Wow, I didn't know this interesting trivia. We'll move to the next part of this discussion, which is about how Disney characters have changed. I'll give you the names of some Disney characters, Disney princesses to be specific, and tell me which adjective which would pop into your head when you think of these characters. All right, shall I start? The first one is Snow White. Would you?
Soft, naive, those kind of things.
Second one, Cinderella.
I feel sympathetic for her. She's elegant, forgiving, those kind of things.
The next one, Mirabelle.
Bubbly, confident, strong, those kind of things. Like, there are so many things that describe her, but she's very different from Snow White or Cinderella.
And the last one, I don't know, have you seen the movie Moana?
I have.
Okay, then how would you describe Moana?
Free, strong-willed, stubborn.
So if you had to take all of these 4 characters and group them separately, categorize them, which characters would you classify, which characters would you group together and why?
Mirabelle and Moana, and then Cinderella and Snow White.
Why?
Like the first princesses, Snow White, Cinderella, they all were like obedient, silent, simply waiting for someone to save them. And then Mirabel and Moana fall into the more recent movies category, which is like more confident, more strong. She's like independent. She's accomplishing goals on her own. So that's why I'll group them together.
Beautiful. That the way you've just described how these personalities of Disney princesses specifically have changed in the first 50 years to the second 50 years is pretty stark, right? Some of them fight wars, some of them try to end wars also. So there are all kinds of Disney princesses. One more aspect where the Disney princesses have changed. One is
in the earlier days, all of them were white princesses from Europe. But now we have extended the different races the princesses are from. For example, Tiana, she's a Black American. Pocahontas, she's a Red Indian, a Native American. Mirabel, she's Hispanic, she's from Colombia. There's Raya from Raya and the Last Dragon, she's Southeast Asian. So there are a lot of different races nowadays.
Yep, absolutely correct. So do you see more of yourself or people of your age, children of your age? Do you think they identify more with the Snow White Cinderella group, or do you think they identify more with the Moana Mirabel group?
They definitely identify more with the Moana Mirabel group. Like my friends, they all follow these Disney movies, especially Raya and these kind of Asian princesses. I really want an Indian princess. It's much needed.
Absolutely. I would definitely like to see an Indian Disney princess on screen. So Disney Studios, if you're hearing this is what Ananya Harish and many of her friends would also like to see. So we've got a ton of fairy tales even based out of India. So they don't have to sit and recreate stories. There are a lot of amazing mythological characters or even other folk characters that we've read about. So Ananya, before we wrap up this episode, would you like to tell me about your favorite Disney characters?
My favorite Disney character is Judy Hopps from Zootopia. She's resilient, she's tough, and she motivates herself to keep going. It doesn't matter if she's only like a bunny to be a cop. It doesn't matter if every person around her, her chief, her fellow officers, her village, even her parents doubt her. Judy was not deterred from her goal. She keeps working towards her aspirations and always looks at the silver lining in times of distress. She's very optimistic. I feel that we can look up to her and resonate with her. That's why Judy Hopps is my favorite character.
Oh, wow. Looks like if you did get a chance to go to a Disney park, what is the one thing that you would really like to do there?
Actually, I've gone to Disneyland before, Disneyland Paris, 5 years ago. I was really young at that time. I don't really remember everything, but I had such a fun time. My parents took me to those rides that were allowed for my age and my height, and I remember that I had enjoyed all of them. And my mom and my dad, they took me to a ride called Lift Drop. And to be frank, it has been the most thrilling ride I've ever been in. We had to enter a chamber, like a lift, and it goes up several floors, and you think it's fine. It's just going up. And it stops at a high floor. And then it drops, like gravity is pulling on it, and it's chain broke. So it's so thrilling to be in. If I get a chance in Disneyland, and to go to Disneyland again, I would prefer to go to one in US because I heard they have some amazing waterboat rides. Like it's a journey through a story, and then you're in the canoe, and you're being automated through that in a stream. Last but not least, I would also want to try the new varieties of food in Disneyland. I've heard that they customize all the food items to make them related to Disney, so it must be really fun to eat.
I think I really love the way you described your scary roller coaster ride. So, with that, we come to the next interesting part of this episode, which is the
This time.
let's see how well you listen. Question 1. Which is the one song in Frozen 1 that changed the entire narrative or the way the story was originally conceived for the movie?
Let it go.
Second question. What is the one characteristic or personality trait that you think is different amongst the Disney princesses of the first 50 years versus the second 50 years?
Independence.
And the third and the last question. Name a Disney princess who is of Southeast Asian origin and is a warrior princess.
Raya.
Awesome. With that, we come to an end to this recording. It was an absolute delight chatting with you, Ananya. I hope you enjoyed this chat and this conversation as much as I did.
I did. It was such a pleasure talking with you.
Awesome. If there's one episode that you really enjoyed and would like to recommend to our listeners, what would that be?
That's hard. I like that episode on Christopher Slayton, how he created a Minecraft universe. Like, I love space and I love the universe. It was really interesting, and I looked up Christopher Slayton. I liked that episode. I also like the episode on that cyborg cockroaches that the Japanese scientists made, and those hero rats that detect where the mines are planted.
Awesome. So if any of our listeners would like to listen to these two episodes that Ananya just recommended, you can find links to them in the show notes below.
Stay tuned for part 3 of this podcast series, where you'll get to hear from an animator from California who creates many of the Disney movies we all love. And before you leave, we're looking forward to seeing more of you. Leave us a 5-star rating and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this. It's our sure shot way of building our audience base. Please help us, and thanks for listening.